Hello, this is Mr. Mitchell, and we're going to talk a little bit about the fourth and fifth parts of the Declaration of Independence. After listing the 27 indictments of King George, Jefferson followed it with a paragraph that extended the blame to include the British government. Now, this paragraph, sometimes called the British Denunciation, is written differently than what we've seen so far in the Declaration of Independence. Like before, it has serious, concise statements, but it also here in this paragraph includes a dose of creative writing. So here's the wording of the British denunciation. And you can see it is just one paragraph. I have put in red vocabulary words, and I have underlined some things that I want to talk about with that happens to be down here. In the previous section, that's the 27 indictments, Jefferson used the phrase "he has" over and over to refer to what King George did. He has done this, he has done that, over and over and over. In this paragraph, we see a similar repetitiveness with "we have." We have warned them. We have reminded them. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity. We have conjured them. We must at the end. So you can kind of see the repetitiveness of the Declaration of Independence. It really drives home what Jefferson is trying to say about King George and about the American colonists, and we have. And I think the repetition itself is a pretty effective persuasive method. Now, the last sentence here has an interesting twist. It says, enemies in war, in peace, friends. What if Jefferson had put enemies in war, friends in peace? Is enemies in war, in peace, friends more effective? You can decide for yourself on that one. The creative writing aspects are a few alliterations like British brethren. I will point out some of that. British brethren, alliterations, you have start with the same consonant. Let's see, I think I also remember connections and correspondence is another one. Common kindred, even though it's not the same letter, it starts with the k sound. There are a handful of those in here, and you did not see those in the other parts of the Declaration of Independence. There's also a personification here. Have been deaf to the voice of justice. Let's see, that is right here. Have been deaf to the voice of justice. Justice doesn't have a voice. And that's how that is a personification, gives human qualities to something that is not human. So these are the type writing which is often considered good writing, but is not often what you use with serious tones like in the Declaration of Independence. So it kind of makes you wonder, why does Jefferson write three parts of the Declaration of Independence very straightforward, and then this fourth part, he includes some creative writing? Maybe when he was talking about the right to revolution and King George, he felt he should be serious. But here, when he's talking about the colonies, he's more emotional, more thoughtful. Maybe he just wanted to save the best writing for last. But either way, this was pretty effective here. Of the 96 words that you see here, the 96 words, 81 of them have only one syllable. Nor, have, we, been. 81 of them have only one syllable. But you then have some of the rest that have like 4 syllables and 5 syllables, like consanguinity and magnanimity, usurpations, ones that do have a lot of syllables. And you normally don't use those much unless you're having a bit of creativity in the writing. And that just kind of goes to show you what Jefferson did in this paragraph, that combination between seriousness and creativeness. It's like a sweet food recipe and then adding a dose of something savory to balance it out. And this particular section has been compared to Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, in that his has kind of that same combination of seriousness and creativity. So let's talk about the final part of the Declaration of Independence, and of course it's often called the closing. It declares that the U.S. colonies, still not called the United States of America, ought to be free and independent states. And I think it's going to say that right in here, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from any allegiance to Britain or to the British crown, which would be King George. And those kind of summarize what you have there. It's kind of the official, hereforth we do not want to be part of Britain anymore. We want to be our own country. The final phrase of the final sentence right here, and I have it underlined. The final phrase of the final sentence is one that's most remembered in this conclusion. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. Notice that the word lives is first, and the word honor is last. You want a high priority to be first, and lives, of course, would be first. But you also want the most memorable of the words to be last. So honor is last. So of these three, fortunes is nestled in between the two, which obviously makes it less as important as the other two. It minimizes the part of the fortunes, and partly because many of the colonists did not have a fortune to spend. But one reason it was still added was the power of three. The power of three is a term that marketers have long used, and they know that consumers don't want too many choices. And that's true in writing also. These three choices roll off the tongue better, and it's easier to remember. There are examples everywhere of the power of three. The Three Stooges, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. You see, you often have three things whenever you're talking about, whenever you're writing. And especially here where you have creative writing, three things rolls off the tongue better, and they're easy to remember. In my notes, I even noticed that I wrote down that Lincoln's Gettysburg Address has harmony, cadence, and eloquence. So I happen to have done the power of three earlier in these notes without even realizing that I had done it. Jefferson knew that three things to pledge was better than two and better than four. And honor, the last word, is also important. We'll go back to it right here. Honor, the last word, is also important. It's the last word people would read, so it had that lasting quality, maybe even sticking in the minds of those who would fight for the independence itself. Though the Declaration itself is concise, straightforward, and impersonal, it has elements of a drama, if you think about it. Now, think of a story when you think of the word drama. So think about this. After the establishment of the right to revolt at the beginning, you have the introduction of a villain in the 27 indictments. The villain, of course, is King George. And with his repetition of dastardly deeds, as the crimes are listed, the villain is joined on stage by a hero figure, of course, the American colonies. The villain mistreats the innocent hero, and finally, after many injuries, the hero takes a stand and rids itself of the villain, becoming a nation unto itself. So it was not written like a drama, but in the end, it plays out like a drama. And this personalization of the struggle makes it seem less like a series of disputes and more like a heroic quest. And when other countries and half-hearted colonists read this, they saw this heroic quest, and it made it easier for them to support the cause. And that is the last video on the Declaration of Independence.